Welcome to Tokyo Game Life, a Tokyo-based video game podcast focusing on Nintendo and gaming culture in Japan's capital. Your host Mono here to bring you a slice of gaming life from Tokyo. Today, pro Mario Kart player Vantox joins the podcast as we chat about the competitive scene and mastering Mario Kart. We get into how to actually get good at one of Nintendo's most popular franchises and how Mario Kart World is changing how we think about the series. Plus, I share some more thoughts on the Switch 2 launch games and give some impressions on the Donkey Kong Bananza demo. Let's get started with the feature on competitive Mario Kart with Vantox. Today's feature is about mastering Mario Kart. How can you crawl from 24th place all the way to the top? I can't tell you, but fortunately, my guest can. So guest, please introduce yourself.
My name is Vantox, and I'm a competitive Mario Kart player. I am the first person to reach 9600 rating in online, and I've been playing competitive for a very long time, and I've recently picked up Mario Kart World since the game is just out, and I stream this every day on Twitch as well.
Thanks for joining me. Today we're talking about mastering Mario Kart in the upper tier level of play. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty about how to get good at the game and how Mario Kart World has changed the scene, I want to hear about your backstory. How did you get into Mario Kart and what made you want to get great at the game?
And thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invite. So, when I get into Mario Kart I just played it a lot as a kid. Like, I grew up playing Mario Kart Wii when I was 10 years old. I always really liked it, and I entered a tournament one day at like my local library, and I just got beaten by this one guy, not even a kid. He was like 16 or something, and I was just like 10, and I had no idea what I was doing. So because I always used cards back then, and then I realized I looked it up on YouTube, and I discovered that Donkey Kong was actually the best character in the game. And ever since then, I joined like a team with some other friends of mine, and yeah, I get into competitive after Mario Kart Wii. I was not good at that game at all, but in Mario Kart 7 I took it seriously, and I got very good at the game.
Yeah, for me, my first Mario Kart was 64. I loved it, and I played every Mario Kart since then, and I probably stayed at the same level of skill for over 25 years now. But before World came out, I kind of sat down and thought, okay, how do you actually get good at Mario Kart? And that led me into the competitive scene of Mario Kart players and discovering people like yourself who are much better than people like me, who just pray for a bullet bill. Can you give us a primer on the competitive Mario Kart scene? Is there one association that oversees everything, or is it mostly a local thing, or just online tournaments, or what does the scene look like in general?
It's kind of a mix of both. Like there's really big, well, at least for ATX, I can tell you, there's really big offline tournaments sometimes with like huge prize pools, but they're like once a year or so. But there's a lot of smaller throughout the USA mostly. So it's a mix of both. There's a lot of online tournaments with summits and MK blogs. It's like Japanese organizations. You have Lounge by MK Central, and they're hosting like tournaments for Mario Kart World right now as well. And yeah, it's all very nice.
Yeah, it's a really interesting aspect of the game that I think a lot of people don't really consider. Now, before we actually dive into World and how that is changing things, I want to know more about the basics of high-level Mario Kart gameplay, specifically for 8DX. I think for a lot of people, winning races kind of boils down to hitting the turbo on curves and finding shortcuts. In pre-World games, is that the basic strategy, or are there other elements that separate the good players from the average ones?
No, it's mostly just driving that separates the good from the average as well. But what separates the really good from the already good is the item play, because there's a lot of strategy involved in this game as well. Not only just lines, like everybody can learn how to drive, but you can't learn how to master the item system in one day. Everybody can time trial and practice, but actually getting better and understanding how items work, putting yourself in the best spot always. You need to do like a lot of thought reviewing, learning from yourself, learning from other players. That's like the hardest thing about this game.
Yeah, it goes without saying that items are a major part of Mario Kart gameplay, but I never really thought of it as, oh, it's actually a very strategic element of the higher tier level of play. Because, yeah, it adds an element of skill, chaos, and randomness to the game. So how do competitive players deal with the randomness caused by items, and how do they take advantage of it?
To a point, like some items are random, but some are not. For example, The placements kind of determine what items you get. So
Right.
if you're in ninth place, for example, you can get like a coin box or a coin shell. So if you're a really good player, if you're going to sit in the back for a powerful item, you will never touch a box in ninth place. That's kind of to eliminate the RNG and instead just getting like a star or a mega that's or golden. That's pretty much always guaranteed because you can't get a coin box in like 10th. And in general, the mid-pack items, you can't really do anything about it, but I like to think of Mario Kart kind of as poker because you have to play with the cards, in this case, I guess, items you're dealt with. So, yeah.
What's your favorite item to use and your least favorite to get hit by?
My favorite item to use, I think, is the Boo. It's like the best item in the game. They really buffed it a lot because it goes through off-road now, so you can take shortcuts with it. And you can also steal a shroom because if you use a boon first, you always get a shroom. So it's like the best item by far. My least favorite item is the boomerang. I really hate what they did. It's completely useless. In 8 Deluxe, it was very powerful because if you threw your boomerang, you would swap your items around. Let's say you've like boomerang banana. You throw your boomerang, and now your banana is like in your hand, and your boomerang is in your second slot. In this game, the boomerang you have to throw 4 times before it goes away because it's on a timer. And only then can you get to your second item box. Meaning that the boomerang pretty much prevents you from using your second item for like 2 to 3 seconds, and it's really annoying.
Since I've been studying up on the Mario Kart scene, I've been really fascinated by a lot of the terminology, like, for example, bagging. Can you share some inside lingo when it comes to playing Mario Kart?
Yeah, sure. Well, you have bagging, which is obviously just sitting in the back with power items, trying to like get the power items up and dodge the shock, or just like catch up in general. You have running, which is the opposite of bagging. It's just driving first on a track, pretty much. You have thing called sniping, that's just like throwing a banana forward to hit a player, or like a green shell, pretty much just hitting people. You have back spam as well, which is just a snipe but in reverse. Like you throw the item back instead. Meta, that's like just the best combination in the game.
I'm really interested in the concept of bagging versus running. Is this a strategy depending on the player, or is it depending on the course or the character? Or how do you decide when to use running and when to use bagging?
It's kind of dependent on the player, but also dependent on the course. Like some players can choose to not bag at all when some players bag everything. But it's mostly dependent on the course. Like a track like Desert Hills, for example, it's probably not a good idea to run that. Because you can catch up so easily because the entire ending is just only shortcut. It's kind of like Dry Desert and Cheeselands from Deluxe. There are so many shortcuts on those tracks that it's just not worth to hold A and run. But on other tracks, running is very good. But let's say you get hit out or you notice you're in a bad position, it's always a good idea to bag. So I notice, like, if I miss the first item set, for example, because someone else steals it from me, and I notice, oh, I have, like, 1 coin, I'm gonna go back and just get my coins up and then catch up, because coins matter so much in this game. You're not gonna catch up if you are poor. You always need to have coins. It was the same in Deluxe, too.
Are there any differences between how different countries play the game? For example, is there some Mario Kart strategy that you noticed a lot of Japanese players prefer compared to European players, for example?
I think the Japanese are genuinely a lot more passive and peaceful when they play, and they're not really that big of risk takers. They usually just settle on their spot, which I think is the best way to play, honestly. Because this game is all about risk management, and let's say you try to hit out first, and you screw yourself over because you throw away your protection in second. I never think that that's a good play because you get 12 points for second place in this game. So I think it's much better to take your guaranteed second place than a chance to get first. But most Americans just always take risks. And I think that's on average why they do worse. And the French are kind of like the Japanese, but they're also really aggressive at times. It really depends on the player when it comes to France. But as a whole, I'd say Japanese players are by far the most peaceful and strategic ones.
Interesting. Yeah, I had an episode years ago about competitive Splatoon, and the person I was talking to also mentioned that, oh, Japanese players are actually quite different from a lot of the other Western Splatoon players. So it's interesting to see that philosophy also kind of carries over to Mario Kart as well.
Yeah, I think it's mostly just based off their morals and values as well. Like the honor system in Japan is also such a big deal, so they're always trying to win and do the best they possibly can. And respect also goes a long way in that culture, so they don't want to annoy somebody on accident, you know. But the foreigners, they think like, oh, it's funny if he gets mad, you know. So
Mm.
it's like a completely different thing.
So going back to the gap between a high tier pro level Mario Kart player and an average person, what do you think are some mistakes a lot of average players make that hold them back in Mario Kart?
Definitely not getting enough coins. That's
Mm.
for one. When they bag, for example, you cannot catch up in this game unless you have coins because coins increase your max speed. And I think a lot of people in general, also, if you're just running in first or like a top three spot, you need to get coins. And another big one is players don't really look back before they use their items, so they don't really know what's behind them. Just a lack of awareness. Looking back is so helpful in this game, especially because sometimes you can't see the item that people are trailing behind. If it's a horn, for example, it just doesn't show up. And I think the biggest mistake that people make, as I already said, is they're just too aggressive with their items and leave themselves like vulnerable and defenseless because they take a risk and it doesn't pay off for them.
I think a lot of common Mario Kart players are like, okay, I got an item. I'm going to immediately use it because I'm afraid of the lightning bolt, or I need to use it so I can clear out and get a new item. So, yeah, it is interesting to see that. Oh, you're not supposed to do that, I guess. You're supposed to kind of hold on to your items for the best opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. You want to hold on to your items before the next item set, and then you want to like re-roll your items and get new ones.
Mm.
But there's no reason, like if you get a green shell, for example, to immediately just spam it.
A lot of Mario Kart games have a pretty linear evolution in terms of what's new, but World seems to be the biggest change yet. Do you think how you play 8 Deluxe and World are they very different from each other in terms of high level gameplay?
Some of the basics are kind of the same, but the game in general and the whole item system is completely different. Like they can't even be compared because in AD the item system is distance based, and in this game it's position based. So you have to play a lot different in this game. Also, the driving is completely different. Like the
Mm.
whole drifting and whatnot, it just feels completely different. Like I'm used to it now,
Right.
but when I first touched the game, the driving felt incredibly stiff compared to 8D.
World introduces a lot of new techniques like the charge jump, grinding, and wall riding. What do you think about these techniques? Are they essential to master at the higher levels of gameplay?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because charge jumping, now that the game is out for a bit longer, has like an insane amount of cool shortcuts you can pull off and like time saves in time trials. And usually you charge jump onto a wall, so there's the wall riding part, and people can do like
Hmm.
genuinely crazy. And a lot of this also saves a lot of time, so it's like a requirement to kind of go for it. Because if you don't go for like one strat, for example, Crown City, like shortcut at the end, if you don't go for that, you straight up lose like a full second.
Hmm.
But that's another risk management thing because you need to have it available for yourself. Because if you bump
Right.
into other players when they're also grinding a rail, you just get pushed off. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Another major gameplay to Mario Kart World is that there are a lot of straightaways. So I need your advice. What should people do when they are on these long straightaways? Should we be charge jumping, drafting, trying to find a rail to grind on, or what?
Just hold A. It's insanely boring. And yeah, literally just only hold A. Like the
Mm.
intermissions are by far the worst part about the game, in my opinion, because they're just so long and boring. And once you've seen one, you've seen them all. So in the competitive rooms, if we're in a good worldwide, we just vote random to avoid playing one of these long, boring straightaways and just play an actual track instead. I really hope that Nintendo makes it so that you can just vote actual tracks.
World also introduced Knockout Tour. So, along with the typical versus race, we have this completely new type of race. Is the strategy from a typical versus race and Knockout Tour race different in any way?
I couldn't tell you. I haven't played a single knockout tour race. It just
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
interest me. It seems like a casual game mode to me, so I don't want to play it.
So, is the competitive Mario Kart scene, they're just totally ignoring Knockout Race? They're focusing mostly on the versus races?
Yeah, we all like versus races. The three lappers are so much better because they take a lot more skill to come back from as well. Because for like 5 minutes, so nothing matters on the long straightaway, and then you play one lap of the actual track. Like it's
Hmm.
just not skill based. It's not competitive at all. And the three lap tracks we're all used to those, and yeah, we all just hate knockout tour, and we're not even
Hmm.
interested in playing any of those.
It's interesting to see that perspective from the pro level players. I guess it's a little analogous to Smash Brothers, where the quote unquote final destination is like a very popular map. Though a lot of pro
Mhm.
players are just not even considering Knockout Tour right now. Do you think there might be a competitive Knockout Tour scene eventually, or is there just no way?
Maybe if they change how the mode works, then I can probably see it. I think the biggest issue is that there's like a whole track you have to play at the end, like one lap. I feel like if they only have the part where you race to the track, then maybe that could work. But I'm not sure. They have to change a lot because there's right now there's just no way.
What advice would you give to players who want to get better at Mario Kart World? What's the first thing they should be looking to improve?
And the first thing you should be looking to improve is just time trialing the tracks. You need to learn the basics. Just look at the
Hmm.
world records, copy them, see what they do. And second of all, if you're able to record your own gameplay, or, well, even if not, always look back on your mistakes. If you score low, blame yourself. Why, like, if you score 80, for example, instead of 90, why did you only get 80? What did you do
Hmm.
wrong? What races did you get a bad placement on? And if you see those, you need to fix that. Recognizing your own mistakes is very important if you want to improve in this game. And being humble and saying that it's your fault and you need to get better is also the best way to improve. You can't blame the game on luck or like losing because of items or whatnot. If you lose in
Hmm.
this game, it's because of your item management.
How do you feel about the character and cart meta? How important are the character and cart combos in the game when it comes to winning?
The card is super important, but the
Hmm.
character doesn't matter at all. I've
Oh, okay.
noticed. But I think lightweights are better in general than heavyweights because heavyweights have like very slow acceleration and handling. So once you get hit on a heavyweight, you're kind of cooked. But if you get hit on like, I don't know, like Spike or Goomba, for example, it's like a lot better.
What about Cal? Where does Cal fit in the competitive Mario Kart scene?
Completely useless because you have
Hmm.
the downsides of a heavyweight, but you don't have the speed of like Bowser. So
Okay.
he's just so bad.
So if you do win with Cal, that's kind of showing off that you picked a low tier character to win with.
Yeah, I guess so.
What do you think the competitive scene will think about the game once more people get time with it? I guess it's been about 2 weeks, so maybe a lot of people have perspective on World's place in the competitive scene. But are there any obstacles you can see that prevent a lot of high tier 8 Deluxe players from embracing this new game?
I think a lot of obstacles are just like the item system is just completely different and the basics of the game are different as well. It's like a fully new game and I still have some deluxe mannerisms as well. Because in 8D, there's so many things that you can do. Like if you get hit by if you get bumped into, by the way, in 8 Deluxe, you can just cancel your drift and then the bump doesn't really matter as much. In this game, this is the case at all. And it's still kind of hard to get used to. The same goes for like when you get hit by a Kamek or hit by a bullet bill, you lose the ability to drift and you can't drift right away. But in 8 Deluxe, if you get hit, you can instantly start a drift. That's like the biggest issue for me currently still. I need to get used to that. Because the basic core mechanics are just so much different.
Since it's so much different, do you feel there's a lot of excitement in the competitive scene? Because it feels like a lot of people are kind of relearning how to play Mario Kart.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's super excited. I think the best part about this game is that everybody's a noob again and they're starting fresh. I think for me personally, like learning a video game, learning how to get good and grinding to get good is the most fun part. And once you're actually good, you only care about winning really.
Hmm.
But being a noob, like you don't care about losing because losses are only losses if you don't learn anything. But every loss you can learn something and get better. But if you're actually good, you kind of lose that feeling, you know?
All right, final question. You said characters don't matter, but if you could add one character to Mario Kart World, who are you adding?
I would say Funky Kong, but he's probably going to be useless. So let's go with Diddy Kong instead. I feel like he would be good in the game. And they gotta add my boy, bro.
Yeah, I think Diddy Kong is maybe the most wanted character. Out of all the Nintendoverse, people want Diddy Kong in the game, including me. I would like to see some like Luigi's Mansion characters like Guigi or Professor Egad. I think it's time to bring them into the fold.
Oh yeah, that would be really cool. Professor Egat, I didn't even think about him.
Yeah. And I guess he would be lightweight since he is so small. So he might become a top tier character very, very quickly.
Maybe, but if Nintendo brings out DLC, they can also adjust the stats.
Yeah. So hopefully they do adjust it. So maybe, I don't know if people want Funky Kong to be the best character again or not, but he
Oh, I
has
would
a chance to
absolutely
come
love
back and,
that.
oh, okay. Yeah. He has a chance to come back and then reclaim his crown. So that was our look at mastering Mario Kart. If you listened all the way to the end, congratulations. You are now better at Mario Kart. So get out there. So Vantox, where can people find you?
You can find me on twitch.tv/Vantox_, and I also upload on YouTube. Well, I have Vantox_ on YouTube as well. And yeah, I stream on Twitch every single day, and it's really high competitive gameplay. So if you guys want to see competitive Mario Kart, I'm definitely the place to go. Really
Hmm.
recommend it.
Yeah, I've been watching your streams and I've definitely learned a lot just from watching. So, listeners, I highly recommend it. It's time for all of us to actually get good at Mario Kart after all these years. So, watch Vantox's stream. So, the links to everything are in the podcast description. So, listeners, yes, check it out. Vantox, once again, thank you for joining me.
It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the invitation, and it was fun. I hope I got to teach you something about Mario Kart as well.
All right, the game section is going to be a follow up to last episode where we talked about the Switch 2 launch games. Now, have I bought any more Switch 2 games since then? No, but I've spent a lot of time with the games I do have, so let's run the gamut as I deliver some final impressions on Switch 2's launch lineup. Obviously, my most played game, Mario Kart World, from the good old folks at EPD9. Even though I bought a lot of other Switch 2 titles, it is hard to pop into other games when Mario Kart is just right there. It's the perfect balance between intense competitive gameplay with the online races and a chill experience in the free roam. My opinion of the game hasn't changed drastically since the last time I spoke about it, but there are two things I'm liking even more: free roam and knockout tour. Free roam has gotten a lot of criticism, but honestly, the more I play, the more I'm enjoying it. The P-Switch challenges are just so addictive, and they feel like handcrafted experiences. Yes, once you play 100 or so, you will see some patterns, like this one is dodge X obstacle, or this one is use X item to reach the goal. But since the world is so richly designed, they don't feel like copy and paste challenges, even though conceptually some are very similar. Also, how many P-Switch challenges do you think are in the game? With the knowledge that Tears of the Kingdom has around 150 shrines, how many P-Switch challenges did they cram into World? The answer? 394. That's insane. Now, a P-Switch challenge is not as deep as a shrine, but it is the closest analog to what a Mario Kart shrine would be. I think the best thing about the P-Switch challenges is the growth that you have from thinking, this is absolutely impossible, to completely nailing it. Many of them are pretty hard. I will say I probably fail half, if not most, the first go around. But once you figure out when to use an item or launch yourself off a rail, you gain a greater appreciation for the mechanics of the game and you become a better racer. The stuff you learn through P-Switch challenges does help you in online races, but again, execution is everything, so don't think you're going to hit 9500 rank just from doing a few P-Switches. If the world had just P-Switch challenges, that would be enough, but there are also 200 Peach medallions and 150 question block spaces to run over. So that's nearly 750 collectibles in the open world. And don't think of them as just collectibles, think of them as racing or platforming challenges. And this is not even counting all the crazy stuff you can do and experience that are not tied to collectibles at all. There are just so many traversal puzzles hidden in the environment, just waiting for you to figure them out. I will say though, I will probably finish all the P-Switches, but the Peach medallions, I can't promise that. Some seem legit impossible, unless I unlock a helicopter or something. I do know that some people want more structure from the free roam mode, like they want a story mode, or instead of P-Switches, there should be a quest log where you talk to a shy guy or whatever. But talking to a shy guy, and then he gives you a quest, and that quest being a P-Switch challenge, then you go back to the shy guy to get your reward. Let's just cut out the fluff. I hit a button, challenge starts, I complete the challenge, and I get a reward. I don't feel the world is empty at all. In fact, it has a lot of character and things I've never seen in a Mario game. Like I said last episode, it feels like what's happening in the world while Mario is off having an adventure. Stars bounce down snowy cliffs at nighttime. There are airplanes flying around, trains pull into the stations. You've got Yoshis and Toads camping together in nature. It is a peek into the Mushroom Kingdom that we don't often get. So free roam mode, I'm loving it, to be honest. Knockout Tour is the big new mode here, and to be honest, I was not immediately hooked by it, but after spending more time with online Knockout Tour, I've gained a better appreciation for it. You really start to understand the different strategies you need to utilize when compared to a typical race, and the intense feeling of just barely qualifying is absolutely amazing. I feel like there's more downtime than a typical race, but this also allows you to experiment with how you gain ground, and you get to know the tracks a bit better. In a 3-lap race, you gotta hit those turns and shortcuts every time to guarantee a victory. But in Knockout Tour, there are more things to be aware of, and you can't coast if you're in first. I'm finding that I'm playing Knockout Tour as much as, or almost as much as, a typical versus race online, something I didn't expect. As for your typical versus race, there has been some controversy with how it's handled, and a new update really got people in a rage. Most of the time, Nintendo rages are really unfounded, but this time I think there is some degree of warranted rage. When playing versus races online, you typically get 2 choices of races that are connected to the last race area, then one that's far off, then a random selection. So if you pick a connected course, a lot of the time is spent driving between the courses, with the actual course being the final lap. But if you pick a disconnected course, it just warps you to that course and you do a typical 3-lap race. The connected course design allows for a lot more variety, since you could have multiple versions of each track depending on where you drive to it from, but I do like the traditional 3-lap structure as well. And others do too, so people would purposefully pick random to guarantee a 3-lap track. But in a new update, the random selection can now include connected tracks with intermissions, meaning you aren't 100% guaranteed a chance to select a 3-lap track. To be honest, I think it would be better to have the Versus mode be the typical 3-lap type of race, with Knockout Tour having the interconnected races. That way people can kind of pick what they want. But now there's a heavy focus on the connected courses and driving through the map, which is something not everyone is on board for. I don't see the harm in having 2 very distinct options. As it is right now, Knockout Tour is filled 95% of the time, but I've been in Versus races online with only half of the slots filled. Versus would at least get more popular if it was the 8DX style of track selection, or you just pick disconnected 3-lap races. Now, I put a lot of time into the game, but I can't say it's definitely better than Mario Kart 8DX. It's a hard one since so many of the 8 tracks are just burned into my brain, like Electrodome, or Mount Wario, or the Sunshine Airport. It's hard to play a track 2 or 3 times and then think, oh yeah, this is better than Electrodome. There are definitely things I think World does better than DX. I like that we've moved away from the kart building. That was a really unique idea at the time, but it kind of hampered experimentation in my mind. Picking a variety of vastly different karts is just better and easier. I also think all the new mechanics are more exciting than anti-grav. Plus, World has free roam mode, which I am loving a lot. But if we're looking at the typical 3-lap track designs, I can't say World tops 8DX's tracks just yet. Give me 100 hours and then I can decide. But I am very happy with World so far. They truly gave us a different Mario Kart experience without sacrificing what makes the franchise fun. But Nintendo, let us pick 3-lap races online. Come on. Now, the other Nintendo game at launch, Welcome Tour. I've metaphorically rolled credits in that I got all the stamps and I saw the ending, but the game, for whatever reason, doesn't actually have credits, so I can't say I've literally rolled credits. But I got all the stamps, which is how you progress in the game, so I'll say that I've completed it, even though I'm still missing quite a few minigame medals. Final verdict, greatest game there ever was and ever will be. Okay, not really, but I thought this game was surprisingly fantastic. I kind of went into the game preparing to like it in an ironic way, under the umbrella of this is kind of a weird thing Nintendo put out, and I like it when they do that, but I ended up genuinely liking the game. This is, bar none, the most detailed and insightful look Nintendo has ever put out regarding their product design philosophy. I'm sure there has been many books written about how they come up with the Super Nintendo or whatever, but Welcome Tour is just far more granular with this information and answers questions you didn't know you had. Are you thinking about why you aren't getting static shocked when you play Switch 2? Of course not. But that's because you aren't getting shocked, and Nintendo had to figure out how to make that happen. It's not a minigame collection, but instead a digital exhibit that you explore. You have to go into it with that perspective, otherwise you're going to play the mouse minigame, think, this is stupid, and then put it down. But the real meat of the game are the tech demos and the quizzes. Yes, the quizzes. I know saying, you should try the quizzes is the most boring thing you could possibly say about a video game, but the quizzes are framed around information displays, which are the real meat of the game. It's not dissimilar from reading a display board at a museum. And the information presented is genuinely interesting if you have a passing interest in hardware design, and honestly, gaming history. Because people are going to be regurgitating the information presented in Welcome Tour in retrospectives about the Switch 2, and years from now, when somebody writes a book about the Switch 2, 99% of the information about the development process is going to be Welcome Tour factoids. Even if you don't care about this stuff, I think the game does a good job in making you care about this information. It's presented in a clear, precise manner, oftentimes with full motion video or 3D breakdowns of the hardware. It doesn't feel like you're reading some impenetrable tome. You can know nothing about what an NVIDIA chip is and walk away understanding more about it. By the way, they do just show an NVIDIA chip in the game and talk about what it does. Is that not a crazy thing for Nintendo to do? Are you not entertained? The tech demos are the other highlight. These are objective-based minigames that focus on specific elements of the Switch 2 hardware, like the HD rumble or the microphone, or even the HDR settings. Once you play them, you'll think, oh, I get it. It's a great showcase of the Switch 2 hardware, and it will make you a believer in some of the more under-the-radar elements of it, like the microphone. There are also traditional minigames that you clear to get medals that unlock more minigames. And I can't lie, about half of these are good. Some of them are legit fun. I like the one where you have to match the sounds or feel the intensity of the Joy-Cons. And there's a great Pro Controller one where you need to go full twister mode with your fingers. But some are just not fun at all, or strangely way more difficult than they should be. The game is co-developed by Nintendo Cube, who is responsible for the modern Mario parties, so they know how to make a good minigame or two. But I guess like with Mario Party, listen, some of them are going to be duds. And a lot of them do have a very dull aesthetic. The tech demos have a deliberately simplistic black and white wireframe design, which actually works well because it is cohesive, but the minigame aesthetic looks like something from a late 90s Flash game and not in a good way. Again, there are some good minigames, and since you don't need to complete them to progress, you can just kind of skip the ones you have no interest in. But in short, Welcome Tour, absolutely loved it. But does that mean you got to go out and spend $10 on it right now? I mean, I got $10 worth of enjoyment out of it, but this game is a very acquired taste. It's for people who read developer interviews. It's for people who are decades into the Nintendo ecosystem. It's for people who have bought books about video games, like real books written by authors, not like a strategy guide or an art book. Don't go in thinking it's going to be the Switch 2 version of Wii Sports or Nintendo Land. Again, you got to go in thinking that you're visiting a digital extension of the Nintendo Museum in Kyoto. So it's not a everybody's got to play this type of recommendation, but the game excels in what it's trying to do, and I do think it is an invaluable piece of software Nintendo put out that we will likely never get again. Now for some non-Nintendo games. Outside of Mario Kart, my most played game is Cyberpunk 2077 from CD Projekt Red. I talked a bit about it last episode with the focus on being, hey, they put a lot of work into this game for the Switch 2 hardware. It supports the mouse, the gyroscope, Wii-esque motion controls, there's quality and performance mode. It does feel like a title that they put a lot of effort into, and it's paying off as it seems to be the most popular and best-selling third-party game on the Switch 2 thus far. And it is a very technically impressive port. You get to explore a huge detailed city in first person, and while it's a 5-year-old game, the graphics do look great and the art style lifts it up even higher. I'm playing in performance mode, which is 40 FPS, and yes, it does tip down, but not to some absurd level. I think the performance could get even better with a patch or two, which CD Projekt Red does seem to be working on. Oh, and I guess I can bring this up, but one thing we really didn't talk about last episode was the mouse controls, which I thought would be one of the Switch 2's biggest assets. I've tried it in Welcome Tour and Cyberpunk, and yeah, it works, oftentimes surprisingly well, but it's not as accurate as a real mouse. And playing Cyberpunk with mouse controls, again, it works well in that you don't need to fight with the controls, with the pointer, but there is a weird mental disconnect between using the joystick to move with your left hand and the mouse with your right hand. It definitely takes some practice. Also, you still need to press the buttons on the mouse controller, which I found to be pretty awkward. I think if devs are going to implement mouse mode for games in the future, there definitely needs to be a very specific button layout that lets you not need to rely so much on the right Joy-Con buttons. I think for some games, the mouse controls are going to be more suitable than others. Prime 4 would definitely be a big test about how comfortable they are, but for me thus far, I am impressed in that it actually works, but it hasn't convinced me to drop the Pro Controller to use it. But back to Cyberpunk, I'm actually a pretty big fan of CD Projekt Red, in that I love the Witcher series. I was playing the franchise from Witcher 1, before 2 even came out, and Witcher 3 is one of my favorite games ever, and I would say it's the best game ever put out by a Western developer. But I did skip Cyberpunk due to the launch fiasco, and I'm typically not into first-person games because some do make me nauseous. And while Cyberpunk isn't making me nauseous, I did have to turn the movement and stick sensitivity way down. And so far, I am quite enjoying the game, but it's no Witcher 3. I just think the story, combat, and the way the world is laid out in Witcher 3 is just better in every way. I will say that Cyberpunk is definitely more of an RPG though, in terms of play variety and character build. I'm doing a Netrunner build where you basically kill people via a drop down menu by hacking their brain. It kind of makes it a turn based RPG in that sense because you open a menu, you pick your attacks, and then you watch them play out. I do whip out a weapon every now and then or try to sneak behind a guy, but there is a lot of menu selection, which I didn't expect from the game. But I am having fun overall. There's a lot of quests, the world is pretty expansive with a unique art style, and it is surreal to be playing something that looks as good as it does on a Switch. I can see this title selling pretty consistently well throughout the Switch 2's lifespan. It is a close analog to Switch 1 getting Skyrim its first year, but this time we're getting it on day one. After Cyberpunk, my other most played game is Street Fighter 6. I had played a little bit of this game in an arcade here in Japan, and I actually did have an episode about the game when it launched, so go check out that episode. But this is my first time being really hands-on with it. And I think it's fantastic thus far. I did like Street Fighter V, which I'm not sure if that's a controversial take these days, and I still think 5 probably has a better roster than 6 does right now, but the new mechanics in 6 are more interesting than they were in 5, and the game feels fantastic to play. All the hits are quick but also very meaty. You feel that leg slap into the torso of the other fighter. The game also runs at a clean 60 frames per second with no drops, but the World Tour mode is 30 FPS, so there is a huge disparity between fighting online or in arcade mode versus in World Tour. And World Tour mode, I was kind of excited for it since I am such a proponent of fighting games needing more single player content. And I like it for what it is, but I can't see myself completing it. I just think there's a bit too much aimless running around. But being able to fight anyone on the street is incredible. And when you fight an actual character, you do get a sense of, whoa, these guys are legit superheroes compared to normal folks. But even if you fall off of World Tour mode, fortunately the mechanics of the core game are just fun to play with, so you can experiment with them in other modes or battle online. And yes, I have won online matches, so that's pretty embarrassing for whoever I beat out there. Maybe one of the biggest additions is the modern controls, which standardizes the controls across characters, and the inputs become a bit more Smash Bros.-esque. For example, special neutral is one move, special forward is a different move. And I didn't gel with the system at first, since it felt a bit too limiting. You only have one medium attack, for example, but it is deeper than I initially thought, and it is pretty fun to play once you realize how many moves and attacks you do have at your disposal. I mean, I can't complain about one-button supers, and the auto combos are legit useful for seeing the types of combos you can string together in the game. Though I do kind of think that the control scheme of the Capcom fighting collections are maybe better, since it still has the 6-button attack layout and puts special moves and super moves on one button. But since Street Fighter 6 has more mechanics and you need a button for drive impacts and a different button for drive parry, you can't really do it that way. But I think overall, modern controls are a great way to get into the genre or mess around with the character you wouldn't normally play. I know modern is actually pretty popular here in Japan, and people win tournaments with modern controls, so it's great that Capcom is giving people more options. I suppose my main criticism of the game is the gap between docked and handheld visuals is pretty wide, with it looking blurrier and much less detailed on handheld. I mean, this is the case for all games due to the resolution dropping, but for whatever reason it's much more noticeable here. Like, playing Cyberpunk on a TV and playing it handheld does not feel like a big of a gap as it does with Street Fighter on TV and handheld. Also, sometimes the hair and shadows of some characters do look really pixelated, but I checked online and people are saying, yeah, it also looks like that on PC and PS5. But in general, it is a nice looking game, and most importantly, 60 frames per second. And lastly, I'm playing another Capcom game, Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess, and by playing, I mean I played it for about an hour. I am enjoying the game, but it's got a lot of competition right now. When it's like 10 p.m. and I finally get some game time, I kind of want to just do free roam mode in Mario Kart as opposed to Kunitsugami, a game where you actually have to think. But I love the aesthetic of the game, and it is Pikmin-esque enough to keep it on my radar, even though it's on the back burner right now. Also, it could probably benefit from just maybe one more patch, so we'll see if Capcom puts one out. But final thoughts on the Switch 2 launch lineup? Overall, I'm really pleased with it. I mean, there's plenty to play, perhaps too much to be honest. I think if you're somebody who plays every major game when it comes out, and then you see Switch 2's lineup, you're thinking, the only new game is Mario Kart and I'm not into that. And that is fair. But fortunately, I am into Mario Kart. And I purposefully skipped games like Street Fighter 6 and Kunitsugami because I expected them to come to the Switch 2. I have heard people saying they should have released Donkey Kong instead of Mario Kart, or Mario Kart and Donkey Kong on the same day, and I'm sorry, that's a bad idea. DK would drown if it was out right now next to Mario Kart. And if DK launched instead of Mario Kart, people would be complaining, I beat DK in a week and now Switch 2 has no games. Releasing a known system mover like Mario Kart Day 1 is absolutely the smartest choice. It's an evergreen game both in terms of sales and how you play it. You will be playing it on and off until they release the next Mario Kart, for example. Also, you have the entire Switch 1 lineup at your disposal. You can still play those games. You can play them on Switch 2. A lot of people are getting into Tears of the Kingdom or Pokemon now for the first time with the performance boost. And if you've never played Wind Waker, you can right now. If anything, I think Switch 2 has done a great job in casting a very wide net across a different variety of players. For people who play everything Day 1, you've got Mario Kart and even stuff like Rune Factory. If you don't have a PS5 or haven't gotten around to some games, you've got titles like Cyberpunk, Hitman, and Street Fighter 6. If there are some Switch 1 titles you've been meaning to get to, a ton got major boost, including Tears of the Kingdom and Pokemon. Or you could just play Wind Waker or Soul Calibur 2 if you're interested in retro games at all. For Day 1 buyers of Switch 2, I think there's plenty to play. But when it comes to new consoles, you either get it Day 1 or you wait for the game you really want to come out and then you buy it then. So there's no rush to buy it if you don't have one now. But we all know that the killer app for Switch 2 will be Super Mario Party Jamboree Nintendo Switch 2 Edition plus Jamboree TV. You gotta say the full title. That's it for games. Let's look at some news. A Nintendo Direct happened, one focusing on Donkey Kong Bananza. 15 plus minutes fleshing out the gameplay mechanics, the story, and a bunch of other really unexpected elements like DK Artist. Yes, Nintendo is packaging ZBrush in with the game. I have a confession, I am not a big DKC fan. Donkey Kong Arcade? Love. Donkey Kong 94? Love. But DKC for me has always been good, not great. And I would absolutely put something like Kirby way ahead of DKC. So in terms of hype for Bonanza before the Direct, if Dragon Drive is at 0 and Tears of the Kingdom is at 100, then Donkey Kong Bonanza would probably be around 50. But after the Direct, let's crank it up to 90. This was easily one of the best game-focused Directs Nintendo has ever put out. It clearly showcased what's interesting about the game, as well as a ton of new content, and by the end, you're left thinking, okay, this isn't Odyssey 2, but it is a spiritual successor with a lot of fresh ideas. I think the two things that really hooked me are the Bonanza powers, which turn DK into another creature and give him special abilities, and also there are sort of shrine equivalents where you are warped off somewhere and then do a specific challenge. Listen, just put shrines in every game. Mario Kart, Zelda. The Zelda team figured it out. We want these types of things in every game. These two editions really make me think that this isn't just Odyssey, but you're an ape, but instead there are ideas here that are incredibly specific to how you interact with the world in the game. And guess what? I've played Donkey Kong Bananza. In Japan, there are demo stations for the game at Yodobashi and Bic Camera. Mario Kart World demo stations also hit on the Switch 2's launch day, and I was a bit surprised to see DK follow suit. So hopefully this is the start of a new trend where all the big first-party Nintendo releases get in-store demos. The demo has a hard 15-minute time limit, but also a cutoff point in terms of progression, so I think in total I played it for maybe 10 minutes. You start off on Ingot Isle to get a feel for the controls, then you're taken to the grassy mountainous area you've seen in all the clips. And this time you don't have Oddrock, but instead Pauline. Many things from the Direct are present, like skill points and stuff like the Banandium chips. My immediate impression was that DK feels very speedy. He doesn't feel slow or hefty at all, he is actually quite fast. I would like to see some comparison between DK and Mario from Odyssey when the game comes out, but I would say it feels closer than you would think. Attacking is also very quick, and you blast through mountains in no time. I was worried that we would have a Sunshine-esque situation where the camera flips out or you can't see your character when they're underground or behind something, but I didn't feel like I had to wrestle with the controls or the camera at all. But I do think depending on where you are, Donkey Kong might look like he's in a void, or it might look like he's in the middle of a mountain and you don't know how to get out. But speaking of the controls, they are a bit unconventional and I think it might take some getting used to. I mean, not many games have a dig down button. While A is jump, you interact with everything via punching, so that might take some getting used to as well. And this does feel like a uses every button on the controller type of game. You've got the face buttons for the directional attacks and jump, you've got ZR to grab things and throw. I'm sure the Bonanza forms will also have their own unique control schemes. I guess Odyssey also had a bit more of a complicated control scheme since you also need to control Cappy and do things like long jump, but the Mario DNA is embedded into a lot of people's brains and not so for this new style of DK. If you follow the story of the demo, you're led to an area that teaches you how to use the explosive rocks. You enter a small area where you fight one of those big stone crocodiles, then you descend to a lower level and the demo ends. Along the way, you chat with a few NPCs to help guide you, and your next objective is clearly marked on the map. However, you can't just ignore this and tear up the stage. I found a couple of fossils, some bananium chips. I didn't find any other bananas, but maybe the section didn't have any. Again, I was pretty rushed. I was trying to get the most out of my 10 minutes. But with my limited time with the world, it does feel like it's very playful in that there are many things you can interact with. There were floating bubbles that you can splash through, and of course the terraforming mechanic. All the particle effects flying around did kind of remind me of Astrobot, and how that game really emphasized just goofing around with objects. I think Bananza will also have a similar philosophy where the game puts you into an area and lets you experiment and see what you can interact with. I do wonder if it's going to be a little overstimulating for some. I can see some people just hitting punch every half second and wantonly destroying the map, exhausting themselves before they even get to the objective. But I think Nintendo is letting you choose how destructive you want to be. You can just, platform your way to the objective instead of just trying to tear through a mountain. It will be interesting to see how the game strikes the balance between the traditional platformer and giving you such destructive power. But some other things that caught my eye, visually it is very amazing. There's a ton of detail in the world and on DK specifically. I think the color palette and lighting are going to be what sets this game apart from Odyssey. Now, while the UI definitely reminds me of that game, I think visually it does a great job in paying homage to Odyssey, while also establishing a very distinct visual style for DK. Sorry, not the deepest dive on the game, I only played it for 10 minutes, but I am very, very excited for Bananza. It could be a legit Game of the Year contender. I mean, Astrobot won Game of the Year last year, and that game doesn't have Pauline, so DK has a leg up. For other new games, Arc System Works announced Dear Me, I Was, a textless adventure game aimed at adult women coming to Nintendo Switch 2 this summer. The art director is Taisuke Kanasaki, who is the director of Another Code and Hoto Dusk. So yes, this is the de facto next project from the folks at Sing, many of whom joined Arc System Works. And if you look at it for 1 second, it definitely looks like the successor to these types of games Sing put out. Color me interested though. Now, am I an adult woman? Well, I'm half of those things, but the idea of a textless adventure game, one where you progress the game with only images, is very intriguing. I do wonder what you're going to interact with, or are there even puzzles in the game? Is it just going to be like a very long FMV with some button presses here and there? Also, Famitsu reported that the game is only about 40 minutes to an hour, so I imagine this will be a very cheap title. It comes out in summer, and hey, that's now, so we will find out sooner than later. Some Japan-centric Switch 2 news. It seems like you may be able to buy a Switch 2 in retail stores, like, right now. No real official announcement or anything, but it seems like major retailers like Yodobashi, Big Camera, and Wonderku have had Switch 2 stock not tied to lottery, but it is instead first come, first serve. It seems to be a little sporadic and random though, and many stores are still utilizing the lottery system. But I am very surprised to see that just 3 weeks after Switch 2's launch, some people in Japan at least have been able to walk into a store and grab one. Not sure if this is a one-time thing, but I have to imagine lotteries are going to end sooner than later. Nintendo has been very successful in getting Switch 2s on shelves worldwide, so we haven't seen any real news of a shortage, unlike with the Wii. They've definitely made it a priority to manufacture them at a pretty rapid pace. So if you're in Japan and still hunting for a Switch 2, hit up your local big box store and you might be able to nab one if you're lucky. But keep in mind, retailers are only carrying the Japan language only Switch 2. I don't think any tourist has accidentally bought one thinking it's the international version just yet, but that day will come. Let's end with some Tokyo news, as there are a lot of upcoming pop-up shops, so get ready. Death Stranding 2 is holding an exhibit right now in Shibuya Parco featuring exclusive merch, and the incredibly gross restaurant Rice and Circus also has a collab menu where you can eat sugary tardigrades. Rice and Circus is a very off-kilter restaurant that serves a lot of strange food like ostrich meat and bugs. Yes, literally bugs. I went there with my wife and she ordered up some insects and lo and behold, they weren't tasty. Maybe the tardigrades taste better though, only one way to find out. Ueno Station will also host a PlayStation pop-up store from July 1st featuring merch from Graph T. They are a big recent player in the Japanese merch scene, with collabs with companies like Capcom and, you guessed it, Sony. Their merch is actually very creative with fantastic designs. I definitely want to cover them on the podcast as a feature in the future, similar to my edit mode episode. And we're not done, as there will be a Final Fantasy IX pop-up shop at Daimaru Tokyo near Tokyo Station starting from July 25th, featuring new anniversary merch. Square has been making a lot of brand new Final Fantasy IX merch to celebrate its 25th anniversary, and I mean, that remake is coming this year, right? Square has Final Fantasy Tactics and Dragon Quest 1 and 2 on their plate, so if they are making Final Fantasy IX this year, they need to announce it soon. Last but definitely not least, I would argue is probably the best of the four, Hobonichi will host the Shape of Mother event starting from July 25th in Shibuya Parco. This will showcase 180 clay figurines from the Earthbound series. I saw some of these during the Secrets of Mother 2 exhibition last year, but I certainly didn't see 180 of them. They do look incredible in person, so I will absolutely check out this exhibit. Definitely a future podcast feature. And yes, there is indeed new merch like keychains of the clay figures. Itoi is the merch master, so of course Hobonichi figured out how to make even more money off of Earthbound. This is maybe the most successful game that didn't sell 1 million copies ever. Okay, let's wrap it up. Thanks as always for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app. Leave a 5-star review as well. It helps with visibility. This podcast is also available on YouTube, so like and subscribe there as well. I'm on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram. Just search for Tokyo Game Life or find the links in the podcast description. If you like the podcast, be sure to share with your friends and on social media. The next episode will be on July 13th. See you next time. Matane.